Medical affairs is always very few people. We cannot reach everybody face to face. And that's also not our remit. We are talking usually to, let's say, top investigators, top experts, in order to reach out and to educate other people.
From your perspective, what is medical affairs really, and why does it matter so much?
Medical affairs is a totally non-promotional function. We are more or less selling science. Medical affairs should be deeply embedded in R&D and also in commercial, translating the science into the real world in a non-promotional manner.
You can have strong clinical data, regulatory approval, and a real potential to change patients' lives. But without medical affairs, organizations often struggle to navigate the real world of clinical practice.
Let's also face it, concerning Omni-channel, medical affairs is probably on a journey and is not there. And they are, in my eyes, behind commercial colleagues.
Today, I'm joined by someone who has spent nearly 2 decades building, refining, and leading that navigation function across some of the most complex parts of our industry. Dr. Reinhard Berkels, Global Lead Medical Affairs Evolution and Matrix at Boehringer Ingelheim. He has led large medical affairs teams across Europe, shaped launch strategies in immunology, in neurology, built MSL excellence frameworks, and helped redefine how organizations measure medical affairs impact.
Before the launch, there's R&D, there's market access, and there's medical affairs. And everything, most of the initiatives that are being done, the bucket of medical affairs, let's say disease state education, interacting with the top experts, bringing back insights is one of the core value propositions, bringing back insights to medical, to commercial, to R&D, to build trust and partnership with the top experts in the field.
What's a challenge you didn't expect while deploying MSL earlier in development?
The biggest challenge is...
Reinhard, welcome to Drug Diaries. If you have ever driven in a city you don't know, you will understand this. You can have a great car, a full tank of fuel, and a clear destination in mind. But without a GPS, you miss tons. You take longer routes. You hit traffic you didn't see coming. And sometimes you end up somewhere you never intended to be. Launching a new medicine works in much the same way. You can have strong clinical data, regulatory approval, and real potential to change patients' lives. But without medical affairs, organizations often struggle to navigate the real world of clinical practice, where questions emerge, behaviors differ, and evidence has to live outside the pages of a trial. Medical affairs is that navigation system. It interprets what's happening in the field. It adapts direction when conditions change, and it helps teams understand not just where they want to go, but how to actually get there. Today, I'm joined by someone who has spent nearly 2 decades building, refining, and leading that navigation system across some of the most complex parts of our industry. Dr. Reinhard Berkels, Senior Medical Affairs Director at Boehringer Ingelheim, has led large medical affairs teams across Europe, shaped launch strategies in immunology and neurology, built MSL excellence frameworks, and has helped redefine how organizations measure medical affairs impact. In this conversation, we explore what medical affairs really does when the theory meets reality, how insights turn into action, why launches succeed or fail, and how the role continues to evolve in a more digital and data-driven world. This is Drug Diaries, and today I'm joined by Dr. Reinhard Berkels. Reinhard, welcome to Drug Diaries.
Thanks a lot, Kaushik, for the very nice introduction. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here and to have a nice conversation with you about a lot of different topics, and medical affairs is close to my heart. It's a great function, and I'm more than happy to help the people to understand what we are doing.
Thank you so much, Reinhard. It's an absolute privilege having you on Drug Diaries today, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Same here.
So, Reinhard, you have led some of the biggest medical affairs teams in Europe, but I always feel that before the titles, the milestones, there's a moment in early life where something quietly clicks. And in pharma, many leaders say it was curiosity or someone they admired or a single experience that anchored their purpose. So what was that early spark for you? Was there a defining moment that set you on the path towards science and medicine?
It was not a defining moment, but I was also always interested in natural sciences and especially biology. And then I started to study biology and I wanted to go into genetics. And then I was at the Max Planck Institute of Plant Genetics. And this really didn't feel right. It was kind of boring, even though genetics that may change the life of patients. It could be research, it could be, let's say, medical affairs, what I'm doing right now, could be pharmaceutical industry. But at that point in time, as I said, I was still studying. I thought, okay, to get closer to that, go towards the direction of medicine. And in my case, that was pharmacology. And pharmacology is also something we not only can do research, but that is very close to the patients. And it actually also helps, let's say, my personal understanding and also understanding of how drugs work. And it's also for my whole environment, it's nice to help the people to understand how drugs work. And often people are also sometimes afraid of stuff. They read the patient leaflet and then all of a sudden, oh, I may get this and that and so on. And then I'm able to help them to better categorize and see, okay, is there a real risk or not? And that's useful. And again, pharmacology is part of medicine, and that's why I went there.
Reinhard, even in pharma, where we pride ourselves on collaboration, colleagues often only see the professional side of us, but there's always a detail or a trail that surprises people. What's something about you that would surprise even those who have worked closely with you?
Well, I'm not entirely sure if it's a surprise, but I'm very much into sports. And while I was studying in Cologne, there is one of the most renowned sports universities in Europe, the Deutsche Sporthochschule. And I went there to study sports besides biology. And that was really good fun. The people there were, let's say, very different from what you could find, let's say, in physics or also in biology. And they were not only very sportive, but they also knew how to celebrate and to have good parties. And
Right. So gymnastics, and was there any other sport that you were inclined to?
oh yeah, well, I did at that time. I did badminton. I still do running 3 or 4 times a week. And sports is something that is essential for me, and that I need critically also for my inner balance. Like it helps me to cope with the stress, and it always makes me feel good.
Right. So now we know the secret of your fitness. Right. So, Renard, in leadership circles today, we often talk about coaches, mentors, and experiences that shape how we show up. And in medical affairs, where decisions can influence patient outcomes, these lessons matter even more. Who or what has been your greatest teacher inside or outside the lab?
That was actually my first boss at former times. It was at Schwarz Pharma, he was leading a large preclinical team where I started. And he was a very experienced guy who was really living the values of a leader. He was walking the talk. He was transparent, honest. He was there for the people. At that time, we were still in the office 5 days a week. He went through every office every morning to give the people the opportunity to talk and to just be there and to build trust as a leader. And that is absolutely essential to build trust and partnership in order to enforce and to support a positive feedback culture, that the people dare to say what they feel and mean and to challenge. And also, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, there is often reorganizations, restructurings, and then you need to do change management. And there you need the trust of the people, the trust of the people in the leadership. And that's where I learned a lot. And then, of course, over the course of time, it's also a journey for you as a leader. You make mistakes. You learn all of each of them. You probably will not be perfect. Nobody is perfect. But you can get better. And then we come back to that feedback piece. I always ask for feedback because everybody has blind spots. And in order to get better, you need to help the people to address that. So you can at least reflect and try to get better in these areas. But that I clearly remember this guy. And then each and every leader had things that were either good or not good. And I tried to learn from all of them.
Right. Wow, that's a wonderful reflection. And I totally echo your sentiment. Having a presence, a leadership presence like that is so inspiring and reassuring for the rest of the team members. So I think you very well articulated that answer. Sorry.
And let me add one other piece. I also try to, and I think I am fairly good at that, try to be an inspiring leader, because that is really important and unfortunately often rather boring. You find these commercial colleagues, the access colleagues, you need to sell the science and not to be boring. It's about empathy. It's about really standing behind the data and the science, and to be a true leader and trying to inspire the teams to move forward to make a difference for patients.
Very well said, Bernard. And medical affairs is one of those functions that everyone has heard of, but very few people outside the industry truly understand. Some people think it's an extension of R&D. Others mistake it for a commercial role. From your perspective, what is medical affairs really? And why does it matter so much?
And I think that's a very critical point that you're talking about. It's not only outside the industry, it's inside the industry. The people in medical affairs do. What type of value are they generating? Medical affairs is a totally non-promotional function. We are more or less selling science. Medical affairs should be deeply embedded in R&D and also in commercial, translating the science into the real world in a non-promotional manner. If you would ask me for a layman, what is medical affairs? When you look at the pharmaceutical industry, it's like R&D or research and development. They make the drugs, the commercial colleagues sell the drugs, and medical affairs explains the drugs. It's about translating clinical science and translating real-world evidence into clinical adoption, and to see how you can best work together with top experts to generate new data, to explain the science, to bring value also to top experts when it comes to interactions, because the therapeutic areas get more complicated. When you look at things like CAR T cell therapies or gene therapies and so on, you need highly educated people who can talk in depth about those topics. And there is also one other aspect where commercial colleagues cannot do that. Once you're going to be asked by a physician about something that is off-label, meaning where it's not approved for a certain drug, you can still answer as medical affairs and, of course, describe the available data in a fair and balanced and scientific manner.
Very well explained. And every medical affairs leader I speak with remembers their first day vividly, because the role is so different from how it's described in textbooks. What do you remember from your first day in medical affairs, and what did you expect and what actually surprised you?
Well, I started as a medical science liaison, that is a person that goes out into the field and talks to the top experts in that area. First of all, I was not struggling, but I wanted to understand, okay, what is the difference between a sales representative and a medical science liaison? And you could see that some of the physicians that you're visiting were not aware of that. So that was quite a learning for me. So then I started, every time I introduced myself, to say, hey, I explained also what is an MSL and the remit of it, and what does that bring to him in terms of value, what are our sales colleagues doing, and how do we work cross-functionally well together. Because often it's more like, okay, there's somebody else coming from your company. But
there are a lot of misconceptions about medical affairs, even inside pharma, like you said. And some people think it's purely reactive. Some people see it as a support function. Others underestimate the strategic weight it carries. What's one myth about medical affairs you wish the industry would let go of?
First, let me go to your first point concerning support function. I think medical affairs is still on a journey. Depends on where you are in the life cycle of a molecule, culture, country, even countries. But medical is moving towards to become a true strategic partner, or sometimes even is, which is great, sitting in the driver's seat. A myth in my eyes is that medical is purely selling science. Medical should also be part of the brand team, should have a business acumen. In my eyes, my personal opinion, should be part of the business, understand itself as a strategic function besides commercial, besides access, and also R&D, working closely together with all of them. And there are some areas where medical affairs is in a perfect position to orchestrate. And I mean, for example, integrated evidence planning. It starts with R&D and then goes into real-world evidence and goes into closing care gaps. That's what medical can orchestrate in a perfect manner. It's just an example.
Right. And you've worked across multiple markets, I guess, Germany, Belgium, pan-European roles, and medical affairs looks different in each context. What's a story from the field, perhaps from a different country or culture, that changed the way you saw the role of medical affairs?
First of all, indeed, there are differences also in the ways of working, and there are differences in terms of regulatory constraints. When you're in Germany or in Spain, there are fewer constraints, but when you go to the UK, it's a lot harder to visit physicians proactively. Or when you look at Switzerland, you get, let's say, one appointment every 6 months, and that is for the whole company. So there's differences, and then you need to see, okay, what can you do in a compliant manner? Because often in companies, they are, let's say, more compliant than is necessary by regulatory bodies or by, let's say, by the law itself. So the pharmaceutical industry is very cautious. And there's, of course, some gray areas. That's where legal and compliance need to give guidance. But there are differences, but the core is the same. It's being non-promotional. It's being building trust and partnership. It's about, let's say, sharing and discussing new data points. It's about generating real-world evidence data. And at the core of it is that medical affairs should be there to help and to make sure that the right patient get the right drug at the right time. If you do that, everybody will win. It will be a win for the patient, for medical affairs, of course, but also for the company and for everybody in the game. Or you can potentially help to, let's say, support that guidelines are being updated, and that thus medical affairs can make a difference even at a healthcare system level.
Right. Well, that's very well said. And whenever people talk about clinical trials, they focus on protocols, endpoints, and sites, but hardly anyone talks about the human engine behind the successful trials, the MSLs. And until very recent, I had no idea that MSLs play a role in clinical trials. And I think that's something most people in the industry don't know about. I think because in people's mind, R&D is different. It's labs and it's scientific research and drug discovery. Clinical trials is a different world, and patient access is different world, and so on and so forth. But they all exist together. So I think I would love to hear that moment from you.
Let's put it there. First of all, the human force behind clinical trials is a lot of different functions. It's a very specific place. They are not there to, let's say, to monitor the study. They are not there to, let's say, look into the protocol and tell the study physician what to do. But they can help the study physician to understand the science behind the molecule. They can talk about, they can help to educate patients on the molecule, the mode of action, things like that. They can build trust and partnership with the principal investigators and with the clinical investigators. Bring back valuable insights back to the medical function, but also later on to commercial or to R&D. They can be a part of that machine cross-functionally with clinical operations to really help to foster patient enrollment. And then that result in a faster closing of the study and in earlier results. And that means faster solutions for patients in need. And that helps, of course, the patients. And on the other side, also the company. I've seen an example with a company where medical affairs, again, together cross-functionally with clinical operations and R&D, was able to shave off 6 months of a clinical trial. And that's a huge success because it's not only coming earlier to the market, but it's also monetary value is enormous because when you look at it, there are some benchmarking studies. it's about $500,000 per day that you lose with every day that you're later in the market.
Wow, that's a massive, massive amount. So every day, every minute counts. It's so
Yes.
precious. Yeah. And
Yes.
if we attach a dollar value to that, and also not just about the dollar value, but also the delayed access of the medicine to the patients who are desperately waiting for the breakthrough.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So you have written extensively about the role of MSL in clinical trials. Are you able to share a moment when you saw the impact of an MSL firsthand?
Not, let's say, not the impact on a clinical trial itself, but the impact of the knowledge of the field people. What I mean with that is especially if the medical affairs already is established in a certain country, that clinical development should involve medical affairs early on when it comes down to also to site selections. So the story that I wanted to tell is there was an aha moment. I was riding together with an MSL, and we went to a huge university clinic, and they had a huge study center. And the head of the department had already agreed to take part in a phase 3 study. And then we went to the lady who coordinated the studies and was the study physician, and she said, "Hey, guys, I'm totally overwhelmed and overworked. Regardless if my boss said that we are going to participate in that study, I'm not going to I will not be able to include one patient into this study. So they are not going to, let's say, enroll a patient. Then it's only the costs of opening a center and nothing else. This is these insights and the knowledge of the people."
Right. And Bernard, we really have the luxury to redesign the role of an MSL from scratch. But I'm curious, if you could rebuild the MSL role for today's environment, what would you keep and what would you change?
I think the core of being a scientific non-promotional role to build trust and partnership, that is what is essential. Where I would do minor changes is to really not enforce, but to support that the MSLs feel as part of the business, that they've got business acumen, that storytelling needs to be trained better. Storytelling meaning embedding clinical data in a scientific story and not simply do data dumping. And then you go to a clinician and he says, "Yeah, okay, what's new?" And then you start, "Okay, we've got this new phase 3 trial. This is effectiveness data. This is safety data. What do you think about that?" It's a totally different story if you do this data dumping, or if you go there and ask, "Okay, what is your biggest unmet need concerning those patients? Where do you see that?" And then start a story and really try to see, okay, what is the interest of the physician? And that also enables you to gather insights, to really understand the why behind the beliefs of physicians. And this is also something that probably needs to be better trained. So what I'm saying here, I wouldn't radically eradicate, let's say, big parts of the role, but I would lay more training foundations concerning different things. And nowadays, especially also everything concerning digital transformation and AI. Because AI can make the life, especially, for example, as of an MSL, but also somebody who's in-house in terms of, let's say, literature research. Agents can help you. Notebook LM is a fantastic tool to give you a summary of a scientific paper, to generate a podcast, to generate a video. These are things that, while I was an MSL, they were not available. That means you had to read every paper from A to Z. And now, and that takes time, and you usually don't have time. So there is a couple of different aspects and capabilities that I would train a lot better, so that the people are better equipped for, let's say, that hybrid type of working, and the working with humans that have a lot of information at the tip of their finger. So you need to bring some extra value to them.
Absolutely. I think you've touched upon a very important point, and that is storytelling in scientific communication. And people often assume that the biggest MSL challenges are scientific, but many are behavioral or organizational or even cultural. And the soft skills storytelling is so critical. What's a challenge you didn't expect while deploying MSLs early in development or earlier in development?
The biggest challenge is usually budget. That's the value turning into long-term value for the company. If everybody understands that, then the people are also willing to put MSLs, let's say 3-4 years before the launch into the field. If not, then it's okay. We've got very expensive people in the field. We don't know what they do. And then that's the point. The most important piece is to help the people to understand what type of value medical, or let's say MSLs and medical education in general, can do very early on before the launch. And I mean, really, like something like 3 years before the launch, because of budget restrictions or because they're on the payroll of, let's say, the general manager of the country, who doesn't want people somewhere years before any revenue is generated. So this is also to R&D. And I was once in a company where they had fully understood the value MSLs could bring in clinical trials, and they had MSLs that were solely working in clinical trials and were paid by R&D. So they had seen, okay, there is value when we have these people together with our other teams, as I said, CRAs, clinical trial educators, and so on, then medical affairs and especially MSLs can bring an additional value there.
I think you said something really important, that a lot of science markets do not invest in MSLs early on because their entire focus is on generating revenue. And when you deploy a field rep, you know that if you've got 10 headcounts, each of them are going to carry X target, and that will contribute to the commercial success of the brand. But when you deploy an MSL, it doesn't bring in any tangible revenue, although it has a wider, more strategic impact. Is that a true assumption?
It is not an assumption. I think I think everybody believes that MSLs create value, because when you ask the people, even if they don't understand fully what an MSL does, if you say, okay, then can you live without them? No. That's not the case. No, but we come back to the point of helping the people to better understand what MSLs do, and for medical affairs and MSLs also to better be able to document and measure what type of value they bring beyond, let's say, mere visits, but rather see, okay, are we able to see that there is an increase of knowledge of physicians? Is there a change in the beliefs of physicians that then hopefully translates into a change of behavior, that then hopefully translates into an optimized patient care, like faster diagnosis, faster referral, or even harder outcome measures, such as, let's say, hospitalization and things like that. If you're able to capture that, which is hard, I fully admit that, then hopefully the discussion around what are MSLs and the field teams are doing, that this will hopefully then cease.
Another question, Reinhard. Post-pandemic, the way pharma engages with HCPs has completely shifted. I've seen data showing that the traditional face-to-face interactions have dropped dramatically while digital touchpoints have shot up. So from everything you've researched and experienced, what's the biggest change you have observed since pandemic?
Well, as you stated, before pandemic, it was 95% face-to-face interactions and 5 video. That has now then in between dropped to 60%, 70% face-to-face interactions after COVID, of course. This type of hybrid working will remain, and it will probably even become more pronounced because the physicians are changing a lot of them, and then digital natives will follow. Having said that, I'm absolutely convinced that there is no replacement for a face-to-face interaction. Face-to-face interactions are always more valuable than any other thing you can do, because we're all humans. And humans like to speak to each other, not like what we are doing, but face-to-face, because you can see micro expressions. You can really see and feel what is the person doing. And that's a totally different way of communicating and interacting than via a video call or whatever it is. So this will remain. And then there is also differences between countries. There's Spain is more akin to digital things, or videos or Teams or whatever. And then there's potentially also differences between different therapeutic areas. When you look at, for example, in oncology, it's also very hard for the people to get an appointment at all and to see people. And then we come back also to the point, are you already established as a strategic and to partner with your external expert? Then it's easy to get access. Then it's also very easy to say, hey, Dr. XYZ, before I drive 2 hours and we talk about a study or a symposium or a presentation, can we have a quick Teams call? That's perfectly fine. You can save a lot of time. But when you start as a new MSL, it's a different game and it's a lot harder.
I think you said it. And while we perceive that face-to-face meetings or face-to-face interactions are critical, do the physicians feel the same way?
When you look at the surveys that, for example, Viva does or ZS, yes, 60% agree. And they always ask, and also I think Helen Kane from One MSL, they also do a survey and they always ask, okay, you want to have more digital, more face-to-face, and most of them are fine with the face-to-face or even want more. Even though it takes time, but that shows obviously the field people and especially the medical field people bring value to a physician. Because when you look at the average duration of an interaction between an MSL and a physician, you're talking about 30 to 45 minutes. This is a long time for very busy people. So obviously...
Yeah, true. And when an omni-channel gets thrown around as a buzzword, but when it's done well, it can create measurable impact. So do you have a real-world example where omni-channel engagement made you rethink what's possible?
At the moment, not really, because I think that nobody's there yet. When you look, omni-channel is not a medical thing. Omni-channel across different functions, access, commercial and medical. And then it also needs to be proactive, and a lot of stuff that medical does is also reactive. So what you can do is you can say, okay, we know we have got Congress X is coming up and there will be a data release of some new and important data. And then you can plan a not really nice cross-functional piece around who's informing whom, who is following up, who's interacting via which channel. You can do all of these things, but let's also face it, concerning omni-channel medical affairs is probably on a journey and is not there. And they are, in my eyes, behind commercial colleagues. And I think we need to get better in it because medical affairs is always very few people. We cannot reach everybody face to face. And that's also not our remit. We are talking usually to, let's say, top investigators, top experts, in order to reach out and to educate other people. We need to get better in every channel and also get better in creating the right content for the right channel. Because at the end of the day, omni-channel is a buzzword. At the end of the day, people will always follow good content. Good content is king, always and everywhere. Of course, if you know and understand the channel that somebody prefers, that's even better. But you will always go where you find value. And if you get really valuable information, then you will come back. If not, that's not the case. It's a bit like, let me give you an example. When I look in my private emails, I get a ton of them every day. And then I did proposals for, let's say, new audiobooks or whatever. I open them because that brings value to me because they've got a great AI that has understood what I like and they propose books that are really fitting my needs. And that's why I go there. For me, this is value, just as an example.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I agree with you. When we receive external emails, we tend to ignore them because we don't see value in it. And sometimes we don't even bother to read the subject line. As soon as we see the the sender's name, we just delete it. So yeah, you're spot on. And when in transformation work, there's always that one moment, either a breakthrough that proves the value or breakdown that exposes assumptions. What's one moment from digital transformation that really stayed with you?
Well, first of all, what we are doing, video calls, and now AI. AI is transformative. It has R&D. It has already transformed R&D, and it will transform our whole society and also medical affairs. And that just gave a couple of examples where it's a useful tool, but it will become even more meaningful when it comes down to analyzing different data points. Medical affairs is, I wouldn't say drowning in data, but we have all sorts of different data sources, social media listening, advisory boards, publications, literature, real world evidence, big data. To make a sense out of that, AI can really help. And beforehand, we were not able to do that. And now AI can help to move into that direction. So there was no big bang for me, but as I said, these different pieces, they fall together and we are on an exponential curve and we're just there at the bottom, but it's moving fast and we will see a lot more changes and you need to adapt. And I wouldn't say become more digital, but that means that the companies need to help to educate their people and to help to do proper and good change management in order to help the people what is in it for them and that they are not fearing that they're going to lose their job. It's rather you cannot order somebody to become digital savvy. That's not happening. But if you can help the people with good examples and good training, that makes their life easier. That's a different story.
Absolutely. And I've seen quite a few AI tools that allows better organization of work, first of all. So bringing all the data together, putting a layer of LLM on top, being able to converse with the data. And then a second use case I've seen is the programs that allows you to create HCP personas based on the segmentation criteria you might have, and then being able to rehearse or train the calling script with them. So that there are 8 to 10 personas. The questions, the sort of questions each persona would ask are totally different. And how would you respond to those questions? How would you communicate the value story in a compelling way? So I think those are some of the use cases I've seen, which I found were very interesting.
Yeah. Well, before I come back to that question, I also wanted to tell another story where I was like absolutely, I wouldn't say flabbergasted, but really thunderstruck by what AI can do. I was a while ago, I was trying to set up a protocol for a non-interventional study, and it's a non-interventional observational study. And in former times, it took you ages and you had to come up and confer with top experts and so on. And so I only wrote a very nice and lengthy prompt, a very detailed one. And then the AI spat out I wouldn't say a perfect protocol, but an 80% perfect protocol for that non-interventional study that I could then take and optimize it. And then you could even propose to create the necessary online forms where the people put in their data, programs, stuff like that. And it was done in 5 minutes or so. It was just incredible. And that was like, I was like, wow, it took me 2 hours. And beforehand, let's say, when I started my career as a medical manager, it took me probably 2 months, something like that.
AI continues to shock me every single day. The more stories, updates, and news I hear, I get totally shocked. I recently heard about this new trial that was done in China. It wasn't a trial, it was just an experiment, but they got a set of 4 physicians, very highly qualified and very experienced. And there was a gastrointestinal case study which was given to the bot and to the physicians for diagnosis. And the bots took 5 seconds to come up with their diagnosis, whereas the HCPs took 13 minutes, because just the effort in going through all the information was so humongous. I think they ended up spending 10 minutes in just going through the papers, but AI could do that in seconds. So I think it's getting to a point where, I mean, you can clearly see the value.
Yes. There is a grain of salt in it. We can make sure that the data sources where you train it on and that it looking for it are fixed and are correct. Otherwise, you might end up with something that is not true. And AI is also very good in selling stuff to humans. They have understood what we like. So you need to have a human in the loop always. I do think that personas are, let's say, an interesting piece to go to come back to your previous question, an interesting piece to go to. Having said that, I still think that solutions at an individual level are better. Because of course you can create different personas in terms of say, okay, you have got a category of physicians that's here, and then there's one in the middle, and then one to the right. But then you still don't know that the individual, let's say, preferences concerning channels, concerning content, concerning interests. At an MSL level, you should hopefully be able, with that amount of people that you're in your core group, to do something also with the help of AI to come up with something that is at an individual level. Because that's Sonos. It is still something like, I wouldn't say mass market, but it's not like all one size fits all, even if it's a smaller group of people that you have. Sorry, I come back to you.
No, I think you made a very good point. And if there was some mechanism to train the machines about every individual HCP in the territory, then I think that the results would be outstanding, because then the machine would be able to provide very precise and accurate way of communicating the value story for each of those physicians.
But definitely AI can look into their CRM tools, what type of data is there, of course, with the consent of the physician. They can also look, okay, what have they published? They can look at what kind of conference have they been, where have they been speakers, and so on, back and forth, and combine all of that with potential compliant information that has been put into the systems by the MSLs. That will hopefully be, let's say, give AI a chance to propose something that is meaningful. So the MSL still needs to see if it makes sense or not. Well, it's actually
medical affairs, medical as well. Right. Wow. And I think they also take into account the previous conversations you've had with that HCP. So yeah,
that's why I said
periodic pause.
Yes.
Right. Wow, that's wonderful. And from my conversation across the industry, medical affairs often acts as the stabilizing force, aligning evidence, shaping the narrative, educating stakeholders. How do you see medical affairs orchestrating a successful launch behind the scenes?
It's not behind the scenes. I think medical affairs in the launch should be front and center. Because at the end of the day, no, because before the launch, there's R&D, there's market access, and there's medical affairs. And most of the initiatives that are being done in the bucket of medical affairs, it's, let's say, disease state education, interacting with the top experts, bringing back insights is one of the core value propositions, bringing back insights to medical, to commercial, to R&D. To build trust and partnership with the top experts in the field, to help in an unsolicited manner that the people are aware of new mode of actions, of new molecules, of new clinical trial data. That then will make a massive difference in the trajectory. Once you go to the market, you have got the market authorization and you've got a full launch together with commercial, it will change the whole trajectory. And that trajectory in the first 6 months is absolutely crucial for the success of your drug long term. And therefore, medical affairs is there to, in a compliant manner, to help to prepare the field before the launch. And then, of course, there are cross-functional teams, there are commercial teams that are working there. And that's where medical affairs plays a crucial role. And of course, also market access. Let's not deny that. Market access is becoming more and more important. I'm a big fan of that function. To be very frank, if there is no access, then you need neither medical nor commercial.
Right. And if we talk about the medical affairs activities or scientific communication during the pre-launch phase, it's predominantly around market shaping activities, right? About the need gap, about what the current medications are not able to offer.
Exactly.
And then also about the disease, especially in case of rare disease. Most people don't even talk about those diseases. They don't even know of those diseases. So bringing those voices in the front and informing and educating HCPs and the common people about those diseases is critical. So that's where I think MSLs can play a critical role.
Yeah, it's the MSLs in concert together with, as you said, scientific communications. It's congresses, it's CME, it's publications and webinars and other things. But the MSLs are focusing on the most important people in that field and the top experts. And yes, medical disease education and everything around that, that's all core medical pieces, and come back to what I said 20 minutes ago, helping to bring the right drug to the right patient at the right time. And that's what you try to do. It's also called implementation science. It's also a buzzword, but it means like, okay, how do we make sure that new clinical innovative solutions come to patients fast? There is a JAMA paper that it takes, I think, 17 years until a new drug really is being adopted in the clinical practice to treat the right patients at the right time.
Wow, 20 years. That's a long time. If you had to give one piece of advice to a cross-functional team preparing for a launch, what's the one thing you would insist they get right?
Excellent collaboration. It sounds trivial, but it's not. It is really understanding the other function, the needs of the other functions, and working together like that, hand in hand, towards where the different functions ladder up into one overarching goal. That's absolutely critical. If medical is there sitting on a scientific ivory tower, that's not going to help. And commercial is there saying, okay, I need to sell it. No, we are all talking about data. Commercial also relies on the same data points. There, it's not Coca-Cola. We need to work, and also marketing needs to work on the base of data points and clinical trial data.
That's a brilliant piece of advice. And Reinhard, I'm seeing real-world evidence becoming central much earlier in strategy than ever before. How do you see RWE shaping launch outcomes today?
Well, there is an IQVIA paper that states that the more real evidence you generate, the better the launch is. That doesn't mean that you don't know what chicken or egg is, that is causal. But I do think that that real-world evidence generation is one of the most critical areas for medical affairs. And as I already stated, medical is in a perfect position to orchestrate that, to own the integrated evidence plan that starts early on in R&D to see, okay, what are the data gaps? What are the gaps that are not being met by clinical trials, which is often the case. What is relevant in daily life? What do the physicians want to know? Which one of these gaps could be data gaps, it could be educational gaps, is critical? What do we need to address? Then what is the right trial or the right solution to address that? Where do we want to publish it? What is the message? And does the message really hit home and changes and optimizes patient care at the end of the day? And that's where medical, I think, is in a great position to orchestrate that. And over the course of the life of the molecule, really to see, okay, this is critical information, for example, for vulnerable patient population, or for small patient populations that have not been investigated in clinical trials. It's often children, elderly, people with comorbidities, to see, okay, how can we support that? Can we support registry? Do we need to do some real evidence generation trial to look and to generate the data, and then also to communicate it, to really close that data gap so that there is that people understand of how to treat which patient population best.
Right.
One other point, of course, it's also there to differentiate, because if you're in a crowded market, you need to differentiate your molecule. And it's often not being done in clinical trials, and often they are not head-to-head studies. Then you can generate good real-world evidence that creates a picture and a good understanding of, especially, let's say, patient-reported outcomes and some other pieces, where you can showcase that your drug is the right choice.
And when you look back at your career, your leadership style, the teams you've built, there are patterns you can trace back to your core values. So what values have carried you through the toughest moments?
I think my North Star is, as I said at the very beginning, I want to make a difference for patients and their families in need. And that's what's driving me. That's driving me through my whole career, starting from, let's say, doing research at the university clinic to doing drug discovery in the in the industry, to do preclinical development, clinical development, and now medical affairs. I think that's what's driving me, and that's what makes me, let's say, getting out of bed every morning to be a part of something where you can really make a big difference to patients, especially patients in areas with high unmet need. It's phenomenal when you can see that patients get better, or sometimes, depending on which area you are there, you can even cure patients. There are sometimes transformative moments in certain drug classes or in certain areas where all of a sudden you can heal the patient. That's phenomenal. And that's what's kind of inspiring and driving me.
Right. And I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. If you could send a message to your younger self, let's say Reinhard, 17-year-old Reinhard, at the start of your career, what would you say?
I would probably say, do not study biology, study medicine. No, really. I mean, no, because it gives you more options and you're even closer to the patient, and it gives you a researcher, same as a biologist. Okay, you don't have the same training, but it's not hard to learn at the end of the day. So you've got more options, and you can become working with patients, or you can do research, or you can go into the pharmaceutical industry or whatever. You can do literally most of the things a biologist can do, and you have got a lot more options.
Okay. And Reinhard, is there a book, a quote, or a mentor that made a profound difference in your journey?
Well, a mentor, as I said, my first boss in the industry was a true inspiration. Because at the university, you're often not well trained in terms of personal development, in terms of leadership, and a couple of other pieces. That's what I learned in the industry. A book. There is a book of. There are two things that I want to mention. There is the book from Daniel Kahneman, who's a former Nobel laureate. I think it's called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and Thinking Fast. He's trying to explain how our brain works. It's a really interesting piece. And then there's one other book. Give me a second. The Art of Asking Questions, or what was it called? The Gentle Art of Asking Questions. I'll need to look it up.
Sure. Right, okay.
That's really nice.
Sure. And we can include the name of the book in the comments, right? And Reinhard, a lot of young professionals entering medical affairs to feel totally overwhelmed by how broad and complex the function has become. What advice would you give to someone starting out in medical affairs?
Staying for a while in a certain area to really master it and to learn it, and especially when you're doing in-house things, you need to have a good idea of what real-world evidence is, what continuous medical education is, what medical information is, and so on. The different facets and the different broader pillars of medical affairs. You need to understand that if you want to become, let's say, a leader in terms of a medical director at the country level or a European level, or do some medical excellence, you need to have a good hands-on understanding of what it is, and ideally hands-on also at a local level, and then potentially at a European or a global level. Because when you're sitting in those and being in the shoes of somebody locally, and then global people dump stuff on you, that's an experience that you will never forget when you go there.
Right. And like you said, there are multiple entry points to enter medical affairs. One is you could start out as an MSL. The other is you could start out in medical affairs in your junior role, supporting role. According to you, which entry point has the maximum probability of succeeding? Did you see the role of MSL as an entry point gives you a broader perspective into how things go on the field? And
I don't think so. As a medical advisor or a junior medical manager or whatever you call it, you also have touch points with top experts and so on. You do symposia and things like that. There is often a very typical career way, and I also did some of that. It's like start as an MSL, become an MSL head, become somebody, let's say a therapeutic area head, become a medical director at country level, become something, let's say at a European level, if that level is there, or go to global. But it is, in my eyes, more not a career ladder, but a career lattice. You can also go into different directions. You can go from medical to access. As I said, access is a pricing and reimbursement. The whole access area is a fascinating area to go to. You can go to commercial. You can even go back to R&D, become a medical director. So this is an important piece for the people, if you're in medical affairs, to understand where can you go, because you don't know what you don't know. And while I was at one of my first company, when I was leading a global function, I kind of did a chart with, let's say, plotted 20 people in different functions in that company who had been in MSL. And that was very eye-opening to the people sitting there, because one of the main reasons why people leave a company is lack of development. And as I said, you don't know what you don't know.
And Bernard, if you weren't in the field of medical affairs, where would we find you?
As I said, medicine, maybe in a university clinic or something like that. That would probably be my place, because I'm truly fascinated by science, and to make a difference for patients. Yeah, that's what I said before, and so it's no surprise.
Or maybe in a football stadium, because you were passionate about sports too.
True. Yeah, but it's fun. That's something that I need for myself. But I think it's more rewarding for me to be somewhere where I can make a big difference for patients.
And Bernard, looking ahead, what's next for you? What legacy do you hope to leave?
Well, next, I had just been starting 5 months ago at a new company, and first of all, I want to land. I want to see that I can, first of all, learn the culture and then make a difference concerning different things. So that's why I said stay for a while there. And then I'll see in which direction I'm going to move. I've already done quite a lot of different, or covered a lot of different facets of medical affairs. What I want to leave is something with the teams that I have worked together, that I hopefully helped some people to develop into new roles and to start and make their career, and also hope to instill some trust into good leadership, and just to be a good person, trying to be empathic, trying to really listen. These are the things that make a difference. And yeah, so it's no rocket science, and I want to be a good person as much as possible. That's why I try to do.
Before everything else. Yeah, that's very well summarized. Very well said. And of course, I think you are in a great place. I've huge respect for Boehringer Ingelheim as an organization, as an employer. I've heard so much about the wonderful colleagues and the culture. So I think it's a fantastic place to be.
I I absolutely agree. At least until now, I cannot say anything different.
Right. And that brings us to the end of our today's conversation, Bernard. Thank you so much for an exceptional conversation. Your clarity, your experience across so many therapeutic areas and geographies, and your ability to translate complex medical affairs realities into practical insight has been incredibly valuable. And what stands out to me most from today's is the reminder that medical affairs isn't just a function, it's a bridge between science and real world. It shapes evidence, it shapes behaviors, it shapes outcomes. And the stories you shared today highlight how much impact thoughtful leadership, strong field teams, and clear strategic vision can have on patients' lives. And
It was a true pleasure, and good fun also.
likewise, I really enjoyed the conversation, and for a moment I forgot we were recording a podcast interview. So thank you for that.